It would somewhat be strange and even arrogant if someone were making a review of Homer's The Odyssey nowadays, which is why I'm doing something a bit different, which is quite rarely done, since I have very recently reread, or should I say re-listened, The Odyssey in a modern translation into English. And I was left in very high spirits. I'm absolutely sure that sharing this experience is going to be beneficial for those of you who would like to maybe read or reread the Odyssey in a new translation, and also to those of you who would rather listen to it than to read it. Because the way I've read this masterpiece was listening to the Audible exclusive audio narration by Claire Dennings of the new translation by Emily Wilson. I will structure this review in the following manner. At first, a couple of facts about the Odyssey that I'm personally fascinated about and that could encourage you to pay closer attention to this masterpiece. Then I will introduce you to the translation of Emily Wilson and speculate on why it might become your favorite. And finally, I'll say a couple of words about my personal listening experience. There are several foundational types of stories, and among them are stories in which a hero goes on a journey, and also in which a hero returns or tries to return home. It would not be easy to think of just one single most important story about a hero leaving his home for a journey, although The Lord of the Rings fits the description. But still, there is definitely one epitomic story of a hero returning home. And this is the Odyssey, which gave way to a plethora of other stories that people have been telling to each other for thousands of years. Reading such an important literary work, which essentially became a cultural phenomenon, of course, is key to understanding many other works of literature and art in general. I was not starting reading Ulysses by James Joyce until I finished rereading the Odyssey. Clearly, you can't understand former to the degree James Joyce meant it to be understood without reading the latter. And now I'm finally ready for it as well. It was also quite a revelation to me when I realized that the Count of Monte Cristo was essentially the Odyssey. Of course, the decorations are a bit different and there are some different accents in the story, but still, in essence, it's the same story. And right now, I'm not surprised why I like it so much. The Odyssey is ancient, although it was written down in the 8th or maybe in the 7th century BC. The scholars are still not quite clear on that. It might have been originally composed much earlier, ages earlier, existing only in the memories of ancient bards and rhapsodes who used to recite it to the audience. Soon after it materialized in written form, it became a part of a Greek literary canon, and then when Greek literary canon became a part of the world, first Western and then the world's literary canon, it became a foundational part of it as well. Still, thanks to so many brilliant scholars of classic literature and languages, we have a wonderful opportunity to familiarize ourselves with this work of literature through a modern translation. And this is yet another fabulous thing about it. The translation of Emily Wilson was hailed as the first translation of the Odyssey made by a woman. But Emily herself was not excited about this tagline, and I can see why. What is indeed important is that it's probably the most eloquent of all modern and not so modern translation of the Odyssey. And it works specifically well in audio. It uses more modern words and expressions that would not require from the listener some extra efforts in order to crawl through the archaic words or just complicated words and phrases in order to follow the storyline, which is, from my point of view, a big advantage. Yes, the Odyssey, in its original language, now would sound very archaic even to the scholars of ancient Greek. But, of course, we don't have any evidence that at the time it was put together, it sounded ancient. No, the chances are it was probably written in just what was considered at the time normal and modern language. So there is no reason not to adapt it for the modern English to make it more clear and easy to understand for modern readers. Exactly what Emily Wilson has done, and she has done it brilliantly. A couple of years ago I was rereading the Iliad, and I was reading it to myself but aloud, since this was how it was performed by rhapsodes, the poets of the ancient Greece. But for the Odyssey rereading, I decided to humbly take a place in the audience and to become a listener, since this was exactly how the majority of Greeks enjoyed this masterpiece in the ancient Greece. I was not disappointed. The Odyssey, especially in Emily Wilson's translation, is pleasant to your ears and is quite easy to follow, unlike the Iliad, where you become confused about who's saying what and why too quickly. But I still long for a book. Too often I just wanted to highlight a nice quote or reread a passage just because I enjoyed it, and I wanted to pick up some tiny detail that I thought was especially intricate and meaningful. For this reason, I would definitely recommend you start with the audio version if that's your thing and you're curious about it, but if you really enjoy it, then do not shy away from buying a physical paper book afterwards. I know it's something that I am going to do. As for the quality of the audio version, I didn't compare this one to the others just because I needed exactly this very translation, and I think Audible has done a great job making it available on their platform. I do think that compared to some other exclusive titles on Audible, especially compared to some audio dramas and outside Audible as well, the quality of recording might have been better. But that's an industry thing from my point of view, from what I see, because audiobooks tend to be less well recorded than audio dramas just in general, with audio dramas having clearly a bigger production budget. I would also prefer Claire Denning, the narrator of this version of the Odyssey, to be British, just because I prefer Southern British pronunciation or received pronunciation. But that's clearly just me. That would be all. Once again, my highest recommendations. This is a literary masterpiece no one honestly should pass on, and Emily Wilson's translation has definitely met and even exceeded my expectations and going to exceed yours as well.